I'm standing for Canada. Hi there, I'm Rick Mercer. This is not a rant, just a polite Canadian request. Let's use our collective Canadianness to protect Canadian jobs and Canadian business. If the label says made in Canada or product of Canada, buy it. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada for Canada.
What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1645 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management Inc. and Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, making his highly anticipated Toronto Mic debut, is Andy Wilson. Welcome, Andy.
I think I've been anticipating this a lot longer than you have, Mike, but happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Why did it take so... You know what? I feel like it took a long time because you left the city and went... How long were you in Montreal?
I left the province, yeah. I was there for 2 years, from January of 2019, and we moved back in May of 2020. So just not quite 2 years, but COVID kind of brought us back to Ontario. So one of the good things about COVID, because
brought us Andy back to where he belongs.
Yeah, sure, if you want to go that way.
Nick, we go back. I feel like you and I go back quite a bit because my first podcasting anything was helping Humble and Fred podcast way back in 2006, and your origin story begins with Humble and Fred, right?
In 2001, I was an intern with them on Mojo Radio, AM 640, with, I can't even remember what the lineup was.
You want me to help you? I could do this.
Oh,
I don't know off by heart, but I do remember.
Ripken, I think, came after them.
Ripken was definitely part of the lineup. He's an FOTM. I'll let you know who's an FOTM. Mike Stafford was in that opening.
He just did an episode, I heard.
He was here like 2 weekends ago. Yeah. It's always great when Stafford drops by. People should check out the Stafford episodes of Toronto Mike. Who else was, let me think, John Oakley?
Oakley replaced. Oakley replaced.
Right.
They left on their own, but yeah, Oakley replaced Humble and Fred. Derringer did like an hour after Humble and Fred. They went till 9.
Was May Potts?
No, she
opening
wasn't there.
Lineup?
No.
I'm going to say she was, okay? Because May's been here.
Oh, opening lineup. Maybe.
Because she said it was like the worst decision she made was like leaving CFNY for Mojo, and then that was like shortly thereafter she was out of this long-time gig. And anyway, so...
She's not the only person that said that.
Okay, so... to me, you're still a young man. Like, I think of Andy Wilson still, I don't know, should I say a kid? Like... But you have over 20 years Toronto radio with a little Montreal in the mix, but you have over 20 years experience now on our airwaves.
Well, 2001, yeah. So 24 years minus, a couple years in Montreal. So yeah, 22 years, which, yeah, it's wild for me to think about. But, I was thinking of this coming over because you've had so many big names, certainly from Toronto radio on your podcast. But I'm the fortunate one because I've worked with so many of those big names, whether directly or indirectly, and that's kind of, maybe that's why I've been able to stick around for so long, is I've been lucky enough to work with so many amazing people. And
we'll get into this, but things have really come together for you recently. You're now, the co-host of the Morning Zoom. You're with the great Jane Brown.
Yeah, another legend, yeah.
Like you're on Zoomer Radio today, co-hosting a morning show.
Yeah.
Like Humble and Fred must be so jealous of this. Like you're on real radio. What do we call it? Terrestrial radio? What do you call it?
Sure. Local radio. I think local radio is a good way of putting it, actually.
Hey, you're on local radio live every morning. Are you at the Zoomerplex when you do that?
In Liberty Village,
Of course.
the one and only Zoomerplex.
You know, that was the YTV studios.
That's right. Yeah, we've had some people that used to work in YTV. We've had them on the show for various reasons. I
PJ
remember,
Fresh Phil?
No, we haven't had, and not Tarzan Dan either, and not Nicholas Pickles, my 3 favorite YTV personalities.
Still on the air in Buffalo.
Yeah, I loved, I watched him and Video and Arcade Top 10. One
With
of my
Liza
favorite
Fromer.
shows. Yes, I loved that show.
You're singing my song, Andy. Come on. You're in the right place. How come it took you so long? What's going on here?
Well, it's your podcast.
So, but not only are you co-hosting the Morning Zoom with Jane Brown, but you're the program director of Zoomer Radio?
Yeah, it's. I've been very fortunate. There. Do
you want to pinch yourself? What's going on?
I do every day. I've been very, like I said, I'm not exaggerating when I say how fortunate I've been, and they've treated me really, really well there. They really have. But it was busy 6 months. I got the morning gig in September of 2024, and then the program director job the beginning of January of 2025.
And I got to ask you this question. I think I asked it to you at Kelsey's. We saw each other in, I think that was December.
Yeah.
And you were at a Humble and Fred recording.
Yeah.
But Zoomer, do we have a definition of what is a Zoomer? Is that range moving? I'm just curious how you qualify as a Zoomer when I think I've got maybe a decade on you.
How
what's
old
a
are you?
Zoomer? I'm 50.
You're a Zoomer. If you're 45 and up, you're a Zoomer. So I'm not technically a Zoomer. I'm a little bit
Does Moses
below.
know you're not a Zoomer? Do I need to call Moses?
I hope he does. Otherwise, I'm not going to do this podcast ever again. But I kind of feel like I kind of live the Zoomer lifestyle because, I've kind of, it's weird, Mike. I've always kind of surrounded myself with it's going to sound weird, but older people, right? Like people that are a little bit more senior than me, certainly in radio, right? I started as a kid and I worked with, Humble and Fred, who were 20 years my senior. And, I play baseball and golf with a bunch of guys that are 10 years or 15 years older than me.
But are you at home listening to Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra?
I don't know if I'd go that far, but I'm definitely listening to, Led Zeppelin and Queen and Aerosmith and a lot of, bands that started really breaking out in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, 80s. That's, I think Zoomer's is perfect for my, choice of music.
So Gen X is now Zoomer.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Jane Brown she would call herself a Gen Xer. She would say she's right on that line between a Gen Xer and whatever the
boomer.
The boomer. Yeah, she's right on that line too. She's 15-ish, 17 years older than me. She's right there too.
Okay. Would Jane Brown appear on Toronto Mike? Would she become a FOTM like yourself? You
know what? She lives in Etobicoke. She doesn't live that far. I think she would absolutely.
I'm gonna hunt. Yes. I'm gonna get Jane Brown on Toronto Mike. That's a goal for mine. So congrats to you on this recent success. Every time I read Broadcast Dialogue, shout out to Connie Thiessen. Every time I check it out, there's another announcement. Andy Wilson promoted to this. Andy Wilson, new morning show host. Like you're having a hell of a run.
Broadcast Dialogue. They used the worst picture of me when they announced me as the I
thought it was the best picture.
Oh, it was a close up of my face. I didn't expect the picture to be taken that day, so I hadn't shaved, and and then they put me in a pose where I had a double chin going on. They couldn't have used a more unflattering picture. I was just like, oh, there I am. I've got a new gig. I'm the worst looking man in radio.
The only person I think I see more announcements about promotions and new things happening with them on the Broadcast Dialogue newsletter is Bob Willett. I feel like every other week when I open it up, there's another picture of Bob Willett. Now he's doing weekends on Indy 88. Now he's just going to do 6 days a week on Indy 88. He just graduated from Second City. Yeah. Like it seems like it's the Bob Willett newsletter.
Well, maybe he's got some insider, maybe he's got something on somebody over there, but Bob's doing really well too. He's got a great gig at Indy 88 actually. It's working out really well for him.
He's a happy guy.
Yeah,
he'll be here shortly for March's Toast with Rob Bruce. But that's a good launching pad because I want to go back to the beginning because you start as an intern on the Humble and Fred show?
Yeah.
And is that
one time a week, 1 day a week on Fridays.
So who's the program director when Humble and Fred are on Mojo Radio?
Oh, because I barely had any interaction with him because I was so nervous. I was like, it was Stu Myers. Stu Myers. I think I think he was a program director there. I'm not sure, to tell you the truth. I do know that the program director when I left was Scott Armstrong.
Okay.
And I think he's still with Chorus. I'm not really sure. But yeah, that was
you know,
his
you
name.
got to check your watch on who's with Chorus. Things are rapidly developing over there. Okay, we'll touch on that later. But who's the producer of the Humble and Fred show when you're interning?
The technical producer was Bob, and the full, show producer was Jeff Domet. Jeff Shawarma Domet. Yeah,
he's with the Athletic podcasts now.
Yeah, he's done really well in the sports landscape. He did stuff with CBC, and I think he worked on a hockey podcast. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, he's done really well too.
Okay, shout out to Jeff, FOTM, Jeff Domet. So you give me a little, are you a guy who loves radio and you walk in one day and you're like, I want to intern for you, Humble and Fred? Like, how do you get the internship with Humble and Fred?
So when I went to Seneca for radio broadcast, and it was a 2-year course. And it wasn't a course, but one of the prerequisites to graduate is you had to have 100 hours of internship. And it could be in anything. It could be, in the creative department. It could be in sales, whatever. When I went to school, I always wanted to be on air. I have a cousin that's in radio who's got a morning show out in Halifax. Oh. And I was, I was into performance. I applied to 3 schools for dramatic arts and 3 schools for radio. So I knew I wanted to get into performance somehow. So one of the courses that we had, which was taught by Punch Andrews,
the late great Punch Andrews.
Yes, one of
99.9.
One of my all-time favorites. He's just such a sweet guy. Still miss him. It was called Industry Relations, and every week he had people that were in various parts of the industry to come in and talk about what they did. And I always knew that I wanted to do, if I had to be an intern, I wanted it to be in an on-air capacity, ideally for a morning show. So Humble and Fred came in to talk to the class, and I did what I would, advise any young kid to do that's trying to break into, I don't know, I guess any industry, is I just hounded them with questions till finally Howard just got so pissed off and he said, you know what, you're really pissing me off. Why don't you just come in this Friday? Here's Jeff's number. Give Shawarma a call and we'll arrange something for you. And I kind of stuck around and they couldn't get rid of me.
And of course, it's difficult to piss off Humble Howard. He's the most easygoing,
yeah, I know. I think
relaxed personality.
I think you're just enough with the questions already. We know you need an internship. Come in. Fine.
So I need the dirt, as you know, or maybe I guess as you know, I produced the Humble and Fred show today.
Yeah.
So the Humble and Fred show is now a podcast. People should subscribe. They're live Monday through Thursday, typically 7:30 live on Facebook, and then we drop it as a podcast later that day, usually by 10 a.m.
Is that how you got the gig? Did you just piss Howard off?
Well, you want to know? I blogged about Humble Howard being fired from Mix 99.9. So I was like breaking that news. You ready? This is true. So I had a high SEO ranking for Humble Howard Radio and anything related to Humble Howard because I listened to the Humble and Fred show on CFNY throughout the 90s. Like the whole fucking decade.
As everybody did in Toronto.
Everybody did. And I love the music, and I listened to Humble and Fred every morning through high school and university. So I had good SEO for Humble Howard keywords back in 2006.
Yeah.
Because Fred gets it in 2005.
Yes, he was a year before or whatever.
And we'll get into this because we're going to walk through your stuff. But Humble Howard, I was getting hits. Like I was getting visits from people searching Humble Howard fired.
Yeah.
But there was nothing in the public realm about Humble Howard being fired.
What happened, where he went. Yeah.
But I got all these, too many to be like, oh, so somebody, I don't know if it was people at Standard or whatever, but people on the inside were wondering if it was already public by Googling it and then ending up on my site. Because I was number 1 for these keywords. Yeah. So if you think, I'm getting these hits, I'm getting some traffic from people as Humble Howard fired. So I wrote a blog entry on torontomike.com and I titled it, Humble Howard, Are You Okay? I'm getting lots of...
That rings a bell,
okay.
Yeah.
Humble Howard, Are You Okay? And it turned out he was fired, but it wasn't public yet. Yeah. But because because of this post... It was a day or two later, it went public that Humble Howard was in fact fired. It was the first time in his radio life he was fired, which is kind of amazing when you think about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially a guy like Howard who, is a little bit more, edgier, right? He might do something that might get him fired.
So in this heyday of blogging, the mid-2000s, when blogging was a big deal, and I had the SEO juice now for Humble Howard Fired, and people were now tuning into 99.9, and they weren't hearing Humble Howard's voice anymore, so they were Googling what happened to Humble Howard. They were ending up on my post, and people were commenting. There's hundreds of comments from people about Humble Howard being fired. This is 2006. So Humble Howard, at some point, as you can imagine, Googled himself.
Yeah, I'm sure he does all the time. Absolutely.
So he Googled Humble Howard Fired. He ends up on the post, and he sent me a note. And he gave me, I remember he said, here's my black, he didn't call it his mobile number or cell number or my phone number. He said, here's my BlackBerry number. And he gave me the BlackBerry number. I phoned it. I'm like, dude, I listened to you forever. And he's like, let's meet for coffee or lunch or something. And we became friends. And then when him, and this is now December 2006, Humble and Fred were trying to get a gig.
Yep.
And they couldn't get a terrestrial radio job. Like, they couldn't get one. Like, they were trying everywhere to get a new gig. And I remember telling them during a lunch or something, this is after Howard introduced me to Fred, I said, guys, you don't need a terrestrial radio signal to broadcast in 2006. Apple. iTunes just added podcasts. And this is now a burgeoning new format. And if you can record an MP3, if you can record a show, I can share that with the masses as a podcast.
There, yeah.
2006, we all got together at Dan Duran's house. Were you there that day in December 2006?
No, I went to a couple podcasts when he was working out of the offices in Etobicoke for, I think it was the company was called Redfish.
Of course. Yeah, I could write a book about that.
Yeah, but no, I didn't go to Dan's house. Yeah, exactly. But no, I wasn't at Dan's house for that.
So that's basically, for a long time, I was just like technical guy, consultant guy. And then in 2019, we had a little blow up in this basement, which is a story unto itself. Maybe I should write a book about all this. And Howard met me for brunch the next day and said, would you produce our show? And then I came on board as producer.
After a blow up.
After I literally, both of them pissed at me. Fred throwing the camera at me and saying, turn this fucking off.
Were his headphones not as loud as Howard's? What's that?
Jesus, dude, I'm going to write a book about it.
You forgot about the fact that Howard went to Easy Rock for a little bit of time.
Well, I didn't forget. But
that was, there was 2006. He was fired. You go, do the thing at Dan Duran's house. And then he came back to terrestrial radio for a couple of years.
100%. And then Fred went to Peterborough.
Yeah.
But when they were both out of work again in 2011, that's when we decided to do it daily.
Yeah.
And that's sort of when this current incarnation of the show started. But I met you through Humble and Fred because not only were you an intern at Humble and Fred, but at some point you're producing Humble at least. So so give me a bit of this. When Humble and Fred quit 640 because they got an offer they couldn't refuse from Standard Broadcasting on Mix 99.9.
Yeah.
Did you go with them to Mix 99.9?
Not right away. So they left, I think it was like June of that year, and I stayed for a couple months because I was getting paid. I was a weekend producer, and I was doing some on-site stuff for promotions and things like that. So I was getting paid, but I was riding the wave a little bit of Humble and Fred. So when they left, my morning, responsibilities were taken back a little bit. I was doing stuff on weekends and even overnights, and it's just, it wasn't that fun anymore. Right. And so I decided to forego that paid gig, and I became an intern again at 99.9 I was probably an intern there for at least a few more months, and then I started getting a board operator gig. So I went from being an intern to getting paid to being back to an intern again because I thought I wanted to play the long game, and 640, it just wasn't for me anymore.
And it needed to be fun, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It needed to be fun for you.
Yeah, but it worked out. I mean, it was a tough decision, and I thought, I remember the boss at the time was like, I don't know if this is a good decision for you. You might regret this. And I was so worried, Mike. I was so scared. Like, I'm this young kid. Have I just screwed my whole career? Am I going to be, is this the rest of my life? I was so scared to
And look
to make
at you
that
now,
move.
Andy Wilson. This is your life, Andy Wilson.
Yeah.
Goodness
cut to doing the Mike Boone Toronto Mike podcast.
And now you're in my basement.
Yeah, exactly.
Here. Okay, well, you know what? You're going to get rewarded in a moment for being in the basement. But so at what point, because you mentioned Easy Rock. So I remember going to a party at Humble Howard's matrimonial home with Randy back in Oakville because they were having a party because Howard was coming back to terrestrial radio because he was going to be part of this 4-person morning show on Easy Rock. Yeah. Those 4 people were going to be Humble Howard, of course, Colleen Rushholm, more on her later, Kim Stockwood.
Yeah, from Shea.
Yeah, and from Roger, Rick, and Marilyn, he had left to join Standard Broadcast, Rick Hodge.
Yeah. And there was 2 producers on the show as well. It was
Tell me who was producing that show.
I was the technical producer, like the Bingo Bob role.
Right.
And then it was a girl named Heather Vigna who had come from the promotions department, and they moved her into to be the producer of the show for a while. So there were 6 people in this small little room. It was a zoo. It was a circus.
You know, there was one morning I was invited to live blog from the Easy Rock morning show, Four-Headed Monster.
Yeah, and we were able to fit you into studio?
I was in they fit me in the studio,
Yeah.
and I had my laptop, and I was literally, so this is all before podcasts, I was literally live blogging, like what I was witnessing behind the scenes.
I remember that day. Yeah.
So you were there that day.
Yeah. You
Okay.
brought a friend with you. I'm not sure if it was a girlfriend, a wife.
Didn't bring anybody.
No?
Well, just me solo.
Okay.
It was very early.
Maybe it was
No,
another time then.
That was another time.
Yeah.
It's only the one time, no one with me. And I remembered I got in a little trouble maybe because I blogged what I saw, like an embedded journalist or something. And Rick Hodge, who was down the hall doing 1010. So he'd run down the hall, do 1010. It was kind of wild, actually. I mean, we can talk about what you thought of it in a moment. But now he's back with Kim and Colleen and Howard. And there was this bit, I think it was Jimmy Fallon doing this bit about like how all 80 songs sound the same or something like that.
Yeah.
And
they've
it
got-
really
yeah.
like, and in the room, it just sort of fell flat. And I think Rick Hodge was a little ticked off at how, I don't know, maybe Colleen and Howard and Kim didn't roll with it the way he had designed it in his head or whatever. And he kind of had what I call like a little hissy fit at how the bit went. And I wrote about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've talked to Rick about this since. We became buddies. He's been over a couple of times. It's all good. But I do remember the Rick Hodge mild meltdown at this bit not really working the way he wanted it to.
Yeah, I love Hodgie, but Hodgie was in a tough spot because he was doing stuff for 1010 in the News Talk 1010 newsroom, and then he would come down to our studio. It was either once a half hour, once every hour. I think it was once every hour. So he was so disconnected from the show. Like the show was called Humble Colleen, Kim and Rick, or whatever the show's name was so long. But he was only there once an hour. So he wasn't, we're all in the same room for an hour. We're talking, we're figuring out how to do bits and breaks and stuff like that. And then Rick would come in and, he'd have to play catch up every hour. That was tough on him.
It was, I think he was, set up to fail. And he didn't last long there. And,
it was tough.
Maryland's still on 104.5. So long may she run. But Rick's happily retired now. But what did you think of this four-headed monster, as Howard might call it today, this show that was on Easy Rock?
Well, at the time, I was sold on it. I thought when they announced it, I was like, oh, that's great. We got a powerhouse in Rick Hodge, and we've got Humble and Colleen, these two broadcast veterans that have both got so many years in morning radio, and then we're bringing in Kim Stockwood, and she's a performer, and she's like this uber-talented singer. How can we go wrong, right? It was just like, oh, we got this all-star team.
The dream team.
Yes, look out.
Too big to fail.
And then it was just the exact opposite. We get into that room, and it's just craziness. You got Kim, who doesn't have any radio experience, who's got Rick, who's coming in and out, and he's so disconnected. You got two producers, one with a fair amount of experience, and another one with not much experience working on air, lots of experience in promotions, but not as much on air. And we had to make it all work somehow.
Jeez, yeah. And at some point, I guess Kim and Rick get their walking papers.
Yes, Kim first. I don't know if it was the same day or if Rick got his a little while down the line, but I think they both got their walking papers before we made the format change to Boom.
Yes, because so we're still Easy Rock, and now it's Humble and Colleen, basically.
Yeah, that's right. And me, I got promoted to the head producer. The other producer, I don't know if she was transferred or let go. I'm not really sure what happened.
Sure, but you're now the producer of Humble and Colleen on Easy Rock.
Yeah.
And very kind of exciting because you're going to play some better music. Easy Rock is going to change its formats to Boom.
Yeah. The first song we played, we launched on Boxing Day. It was a weird day to launch, but we launched Boom 97.3 on Boxing Day. And the first song we played was Journey, Don't Stop Believing. And after working for Mix and Easy Rock and not playing stuff like Journey, playing Journey, hearing that on 97.3 was just so cool. It was so, and all the credit to Boom. They still play very good music.
Well, the joke is that I don't know how long Humble and Colleen go, but at some point, are you sort of like the baby going out with the bathwater? Because at some point, Humble and Colleen get their pink slips from Boom.
Yeah, and again, I survived. I was like, I worked with a lot of people and very fortunate to work with so many talented people. But I've always felt kind of guilty because I've survived so many
Like a
firings.
cockroach.
Yes, I've survived so many firings, and I always I feel bad. Okay, if
That's
I'm
called survivor guilt. That's a real thing.
Or am I the problem? Right? What's the common denominator? Well, it's me. All these people keep getting let
So
go.
you're telling me Humble and Colleen get fired, basically.
Yeah.
So now this is the second time, if you're keeping track, that Humble Howard gets fired. Humble and Colleen get fired. They're replaced by Stu Jeffries. Am I
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So and
yep.
Stu's there today. So
Yes,
that's
he's
unbelievable.
still there.
And what a sweetheart. He's been over a couple of times. He's great.
Yeah, Stu was good.
And Stu's the only guy in the room.
Yeah.
When I've seen him recording, and it's just he's just doing all the board op and doing all the setting everything up, and there's no one else in that room except Stu Jeffries.
A while ago, I reached out to him when I was in between jobs, and I was like, "Stu, you need a producer, man. You can't do this all on your own. You got
He
to.
likes to do it
I'm
all.
sure you want some." That's exactly what he said.
Yeah,
He said,
I
"You know
get
what?
it, because
yeah.
I don't want a producer on this show either. So sorry. Sorry, interns. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm a one man operation here. So when Humble and Colleen leave Boom, what happens to Andy Wilson?
I was transferred over to was it Mix 99.9 at the time? I can't remember if they had made the switch to Virgin or not, but I was transferred over to 99.9 one way or another to work with, I believe, Maddog and Billie. Yeah, I worked with Maddog and Billie for a very short time, and then they changed that show again. Billie was let go, and I was still there. I survived, of course, and that's when they brought in Maura Grierson. There's probably some dates that aren't totally accurate, but they brought in Maura to work with Maddog.
So this is wild. So if you're keeping track at home, you're with Humble and Fred, then you're with Humble, Colleen, Kim, and Rick, and then
yeah.
you're with Humble and Colleen,
Yeah.
and now you're with Maddog and Billie,
Yeah.
but then shortly thereafter, this becomes Maddog and Maura.
Yeah, Maura started 2 months after me. We both started at 99.9 around the same time. I started in November. I think she started in January. So I've known Maura for years. But yeah, it was Maddog and Maura, and they were a show for, I want to say, about 3 years. They did a show together, Maddog and Maura.
Now, Maura I've met, but haven't had her in the basement. That sounds dirty, but it's not. And Maddog's been over several times, but he's now in Montreal, where you were for a bit.
Yeah.
But maybe just a little bit on these big personalities, these big Toronto radio legends you worked with. Like, I don't know what you're willing to say because you're still in the game. When you retire from the game and come over, maybe we'll get more real talk. Who knows? But what was it like? Like, what were Humble and Fred like to work with? I'm just curious what your dynamic was with these two guys.
Honestly, they were the best. I still say, I'll say this, to anybody. I owe them so much. They were very giving. Right? It was obviously their show, and they were, control freaks, but that's a good thing because it's their show. You should be a control freak for your own show. But they were so giving with their time for me. I think they saw me as somebody that was just looking to learn. I wasn't looking to make myself into anything. I just wanted to learn. I just wanted to be around the business, and I knew that I was fortunate to work under them. So I always found them to be the most giving person. And I always remember when I was an intern, and it sounds so trivial, but as an intern, getting paid little to no money, Humble and Fred always wanted coffee in the morning. They always wanted breakfast. And one of your jobs as an intern was to get them coffee or breakfast or whatever. And I always thought, what an honor, because I know it sounds so stupid, but they would always give us 2 coffees, and they'd give me $20. Well, okay, so I'm coming back with
and they say keep the change?
Yes, and so there'd be like $15 of change, and there were little things like that made them stand out, so much more above the crowd because again, they were just so giving to somebody in my position. So I've got nothing. I know maybe it sounds boring or whatever, but I've got nothing bad to say about them. I still love them to death.
Well, and we know your relationship with them is good because I saw you at Kelsey's supporting them as they did a live show in December. Like, you guys are obviously still buds.
Yeah, well, you know what? We lost contact a little bit, moving to Montreal, and life gets busy and stuff like that. But I never want, and this, it's a cliche, and it's probably the same for any business, Mike, but you don't burn bridges. And I'm sure I've made mistakes along the way, but I've always tried to maintain healthy relationships with people that I've worked with. However, that relationship ended, I've always tried to keep things going in a positive manner because you just never know. You never know. And so you always want to have these people in your corner. Why not? Especially people like Humble and Fred, Maddog, Maura, Tucker.
Well, yeah, like
big names.
So these are big names, especially in Toronto radio circles. And, you must have had a good relationship with Humble Howard because you're producing him again, as we just discussed. You're producing him on Mixed. Where are we again?
Not-
no, at Easy,
No, I know, there's a lot.
at Boom. At Boom. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah. No, at Easy Rock, he wasn't there at Boom. Humble.
Well, he was there at Boom because Easy Rock switches to Boom and it's still Humble and Colleen for a while.
Was it?
Yeah.
I can't remember. See,
You have to
this is
trust
so
me on
long
this
ago.
one.
No, I do. You're right.
So he absolutely, because
Yes,
I remember
yes,
even
yes.
chatting with
Yep.
Howard on the phone. He's
Yep,
excited
I
about the
remember, yeah.
music format changing
Yeah.
because Boom, unlike Easy Rock, Boom plays songs that would have been played on CFY in the 90s.
It fit him much better, yeah.
You get an REM song or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of stuff from, late 80s. I think he started at CFNY in 89.
Yep.
But yeah, all through the 90s, and Boom's all over that. Yeah.
Boom. Okay, speaking of Boom, Boom is a weird station in this country because Boom here is owned by Newcap. No,
is it
or
Stingray?
Stingray.
Yeah,
Stingray bought Newcap. Okay.
Yeah.
But Colleen Rushholm was on Boom, owned by Chorus
In Ottawa.
in
right?
Ottawa.
Yeah.
So that's weird. Like, I don't know, maybe you don't know the answer, but does Stingray license the name? I don't know of this anywhere else.
Yeah, you've got the wrong
tapping out.
podcast for
Andy,
that.
Come on.
Yeah, I know
gotta
a lot of
find out.
people, but
I'll
I
get
don't know
Stu
a lot of
Jeffries online
things.
too. Okay.
Yes, he
Okay.
might know better than me.
So the woman I wanted, this is a long-winded way of saying, because I'm a big fan of this woman. She's been over several times, and she's promised me as soon as an NDA expires, she will be back in the basement to talk to me about what happened. But what was it like working with the lovely and talented Colleen Rushholm?
She's one of the more naturally funny people that I've worked with in radio. And I don't think she knew how funny she was at times, right? She would just say things that were just so ridiculous.
Well, Howard's gone on the record to say that the Humble and Colleen show between the breaks, like when you're not recording, he says was the funniest thing he's ever heard.
Yeah, him and I talk about that all the time because it was.
But why not? What was it that when the red light came on, did you feel you need to, I don't know, harness your funny because you're trying not to be too edgy?
You know what it was, I think, for her, and I don't think she's alone in this boat, is at the time, I think women in broadcasting were portrayed a certain way, rightly or wrongly, and I think image... I don't want to speak for anybody, but I think image probably mattered a lot to people, and you didn't want to. If you're a certain character on air, you're a little bit worried to be your real self on air, and so you got to be maybe a little bit fake, a little bit about
rein it in a bit,
yeah, or what the bosses want, or what the consultants want. They say, oh, they don't want this kind of woman, or they don't want that. And women were very, very hyper focused. Probably too. Obviously, I think definitely too hyper focused on at that time. And I think Colleen, and I don't. Again, I don't want to speak for her, but I think Colleen and a lot of other women probably felt that they weren't able to be their natural true selves on air. Or they were hesitant.
No, I hear you. That makes complete sense to me. You're kind of second guessing because your instinct when there's no red light on and you're just privately chatting, you're going to just be yourself, unfiltered. And then when the red light's on, you might second guess, is this going to be like, am I going to get a meeting with a program director because of this?
Or you've got a role, right? As the woman on the show, you've got a role that you've got to be, pigeonholed into, and
laugh at the guy's jokes.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like laugh at Howard's jokes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was, that's fine because he was funny, but she was so funny too.
Right.
But she didn't bring as much of that funny on air, and I think she knew that too because they would talk publicly off air, like this is the show right here. Right. So they knew at the time even.
What was it like working with Maddog, Jay Michaels?
Again, it sounds... Listen, I'm not going to be saying anything controversial today, Mike, because I'm like you said, I'm still in the business.
Still in the game. You're coming back when you retire.
I've still got good relations, I think, with everybody. I was talking to Maddog a few days ago, just over Instagram. Again, super talented, right? He thought about radio in a very different way than Humble did. Humble was, a stand-up comedian. He's got that background. He's very quick to be funny. Jay saw bits. He was able to turn so many things into bits in different ways, and I think that's where Maddog's creativity really thrived, was turning small little things into big bits and making it a subject on the show, or turning it into whatever he wanted to turn it into. He was super talented with that. That was his strength, and it probably still is to a certain extent.
Why was Billie fired?
Billie was fired because I think I don't know. I don't know all.
Careful, you're being too honest.
No, I know. I don't know all the ins and outs, to tell you the truth. But I think Billie was just she was just done with Mix, or Virgin, I suppose. She was there for Virgin. She was there for from mixed to Virgin. I think she was done with that. I think she had some stuff going on with her own life that was maybe a little bit of a distraction. And, mornings were maybe a little bit tough for her. So no fault of her own. She was just distracted, I think. And I think that was maybe ultimately her downfall because she couldn't balance both things. But again, she's doing really well. She's a program director and a morning show host in I'm not sure where, in Ontario somewhere.
Kitchener?
I don't
want to get it wrong.
Right.
I don't want to get it wrong.
It's probably something around.
I will take this moment to cross promote here that the Billie Holiday episode of Toronto Mic'd is pretty damn great. So I pepper her with all these exact questions here. So go find the Billie Holiday episode of Toronto Mic'd. No, not that Billie Holiday, this Billie Holiday. And then you get all this scoop on why the heck she's gone from Virgin Radio 99.9.
Yeah, it was Virgin, yeah.
And Maddog sticks around. They team him with Maura, as you said. Maura, who you would work with again in the future. But just tell me a little bit about working with Maura.
So Maura, I love Maura. And like I said, we started around the same time. So I definitely have I feel like I've got a closer relationship with her. And I love her husband, Matt, now. Maura brought out the best in Maddog. Maura brought out a different side of Maddog. And Maura was a totally different kind of broadcaster, a little bit more willing to put herself out there. And Maura was funny, and she knew it. And she knew that she was, she's a little bit of a different person. She's a little bit of a hippie, but she knows it, and she leans into it. And that's where Maura, that's where the gold comes from with Maura, is she leans into who she is, and she doesn't take things too personally. She rolls with the punches. She can hang with the guys better than anybody, and she was great for Maddog. I really think that she brought out the best in him, and he was able. That was her first morning gig, so he was able to bring out a lot from her too.
Well, Maura owes a lot to Maddog because today, like as we speak, Maura is the morning show co-host with Tucker, who we'll get to in a minute, on 102.1, where Humble and Fred were before they went to Mojo when you joined them.
Maura's been doing morning radio. I don't know when Maddog started, when him and Maura started, whatever that was. But Maura's probably been doing morning radio in Toronto on air for at least a decade. Who can say? How many people can really say that? Especially
than Marilyn Dennis.
Well, especially women. So if you're talking just women right now, you got Marilyn, and then who else?
Yeah, talking. That's
like Jane Brown. Jane Brown, I guess.
How long has Jane Brown been on Zoomer Radio in the mornings?
Oh, she's been there doing morning news way before my time. I want to say 14 years.
See, I don't know if you count news. I'm going to throw FOTM Jill Dempsey into the mix.
So if you're going to count news, you got to open it right up. But Maura never did news. She on
she
air
was
host.
Of course, no. Yeah. You're right. If we put the unicorn known as Marilyn Dennis aside, she's probably going to be on the air for another 30 years.
Sure, why not? she'll stop being on air whenever she wants.
She might end up owning that station. Belle will be just take it. It's yours.
Yeah.
Well, some people start a podcast and she just takes the radio station.
Yeah, she's going to make her own decisions about her career, which is that's what everybody wants in radio, really.
Well, yeah, good for her.
But Maura, I've got nothing. I have nothing but love for Maura, and I'm so happy for her and Tucker, and I think they have a great chemistry together. But yeah, Maura's one of the best. She's been around for so long.
So what happens to Maddog? So we just talked about it was Maddog and Billie, and then we said it's Maddog and Maura. You're producing this show, right?
I was the assistant producer on that show.
Assistant or associate?
Associate, whatever. ASST.
I had an A on my Gilmore jersey from 1993, I think it was.
Yeah.
Because Wendell Clark, who's over here in the background. Not really, just a picture of him, everybody.
Yeah, he's not sitting in a corner.
He's my silent co-host. He doesn't get to talk on the mic. It's just Wendell Clark here. In case you want to, when
he's spoken to.
In case you come at me, I need some muscle to protect me here. I got Wendell Clark here. But I had this jersey, and I got to admit, in 93, I'm like a teenager, okay? I'm pretty old, and I'm thinking A stands for assistant captain. This is what I'm thinking as a teenager. And at some point, somebody says, Mike, A doesn't stand for assistant. And I'm like, what are you talking about? A is assistant captain. You're assistant captain. No, it's alternate captain. A on the hockey jersey is for alternate.
Really?
Yep.
Oh,
you thought it was assistant too,
yes,
right?
I've 42 years I've been on this earth thinking assistant captain. I've been totally okay with it. Alternate makes way more sense.
I know, but I mean, I didn't go 42 years of ignorance like you, Andy. That's a new record for ignorance. But I did go a good 20-something years thinking A stood for assistant captain.
So I was alternate producer then.
You were
is what
alternate
you're saying.
producer.
Yeah, yeah.
It's fucking...
I was the alternate producer on Maddog and Maura.
But okay, so Maddog and Billie becomes Maddog and Maura,
Yeah.
and then it's Maura and Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to Maddog?
Maddog, he was let go. And he had, he was probably on air at 99.9 for a good 6 years. He was let go. And he did a lot of stuff with 1010 and 104 and Chum.
But you do realize all these stations, am I right? All these stations are owned by the same cable company.
Yeah, well, it was Standard, became Astral, became Bell. But yeah, they were all under the same umbrella.
But yes, right. Sorry. Yes, it was. Of course, it was Standard became Astral, became Bell.
Yeah.
But so Maddog, gone from 99.9, did absolutely resurfaced on 1010 and did some 104. Probably filled in for Roger Ashby when he got vacation days or something like that.
He did a lot of fill in. He did like a good month or two run there. I think Roger was away for a while or whatever.
Well, he probably wanted that gig.
He did. Well, why not?
Yeah.
Anybody would.
Sure.
And I think him and Marilyn had a great chemistry, and I think he probably came in second to whoever got that gig. But I thought he was a shoo-in for that gig. I really did. I was a little bit surprised that they went whatever.
But he did get an
direction they went.
afternoon drive gig at 1010. He was on The Rush.
Oh, that's right, with Ryan Doyle.
Yeah, and then Ryan was walked out, and then it was who was it Reshmi? Anyways,
It was a very short-lived.
I can't remember anymore. But bottom line is, he got an offer to go to Montreal.
Yeah.
And he went, and he's still happily in Montreal, Maddog. So
Well, he found a great gig on a really big station in Montreal. It's a rock station.
Shom?
Yeah, and it's a perfect gig for him and where he's at in his life. And I haven't really heard much. I've heard a couple breaks here and there that he posts on social media, but I know that the format of that station fits perfectly with him. I know him and his wife, they've moved out there. Their kid, Dustin, has moved to Montreal as well. So, Montreal has worked out very, very well.
My daughter is,
very
although not this week because it's reading week, but my daughter lives in Montreal during the school year.
Where does she live?
The Plateau area. There's a neighborhood called the Plateau.
Yeah. Is she going to McGill?
Yeah, she's going to McGill. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So she shares a flat with three other students. The four of them live in this flat, and she loves Montreal.
I love Montreal.
I'm afraid I'm going to lose her to Montreal. This is my new fear.
We absolutely loved living in Montreal and where we lived, and we've talked about going back for vacation, and we loved everything about Montreal. The job didn't work out, but everything else.
Okay, let's get you to Montreal. So here, okay, so Maura and Tucker.
Well, all this talking, we've got 3 beers here, and they're just looking at me.
I was thinking I might run. You want a cold one? I can go to the fridge and get you one. Like if you tell me this.
Oh, I thought you were offering me warm beers because
no, those are going home with you. So Great Lakes beer, yeah, that's going home with you. Those 4 are going home with you. But if you tell me now lager, ale, or IPA, I'll zip up. I'll get you started on something, and I'll zip up while you're talking and get you a cold one. Do you want a lager, an ale, or an IPA?
I'll have a lager or an ale.
Lager or ale?
Whatever.
What are you,
whatever
Kim Mitchell now?
Yeah. No, whatever one you grab first, I'll happily take.
Did you play Kim Mitchell on Zoomer Radio?
Yes, we played. We had Kim Mitchell on last summer. He was doing the Burlington Sound of Music, so we had Kim Mitchell on, and we play Kim Mitchell all the time.
I bet you Patio Lanterns gets played on the daily on Zoomer.
No, you know what? It doesn't get played as much as you think. We, I can't remember the name of the song. It's a slower song that we play actually a fair amount.
Diamonds?
No.
It's not lager and ale. So here's what I'm gonna do.
All right.
I need you to talk. I'll listen to you while I run upstairs to get you a. I'll get you a
so much
Canuck
today,
Pale.
Mike.
No, this is your job.
Yeah, I know.
It's your Toronto Mike debut. I got to capture it. When you die, people are going to listen to this episode to know what and who was Andy Wilson. Okay.
This is what it's gonna. This is the only thing that'll live on in my career.
Well, we'll see. I'm setting you up for this. I want to know, how do you get the producer gig with Maura and Tucker? Aren't you producing that show on 99.9 Virgin Radio?
Wait, what do you mean? How do I get?
You said you're alternate producer.
I see. Yes.
You get producer gigs. So maybe talk a little bit about working with Maura and Tucker.
Yeah.
on 99.9 and a little bit about Maura and Tucker. I'm only going to be 20 seconds.
Okay, well, so the producer that we had with Maddog and Maura, she was from America, and so when when Maddog got let go, we kept the producer, and I stayed as the alternate producer, and that was the way it went for about 9 months or so, and then they made a change. The type of show that she liked to produce wasn't the type of show that Tucker and Maura liked to produce. The type of show that she liked to do was a lot of pre-prepared bits, a lot of stuff that was scripted out, right? And so it wasn't as off the cuff. It wasn't as much in the moment. And that's the type of show that Tucker and Maura really thrive on, is things happening in the moment and reacting, and not so much not planning out, because that doesn't sound all that professional, but
More spontaneous?
Yes, exactly. And so
I'm like a thesaurus over here.
Yeah, you are. You're a very smart guy. You're a wordsmith. So they went in a different direction, and that's when I got promoted. It took about 6 months. Like, they really, I don't know if they didn't buy into me or if they were just lazy at Bell, but it took about 6 months. I applied for that job right away.
Sure.
And
well, you're the natural choice.
well, I thought so too, but for 6 months, Bell Media disagreed. But finally, it finally worked out. They came around, and I had a great time producing with that. We had a lot of fun on that show. I think that was the show that really gave me my confidence. I think I took another step in my career with that show. Tucker was really adamant about people that work on the show are personalities on the show, and he wanted everybody that worked on that show to contribute in an on-air way, not to just produce IDs in the background or get coffee or wrangle guests. Tucker wanted everybody that worked on that show to be a character, which I totally respected, and I thought I've kind of seen things that way since then too.
Amazing. I want you to crack open your Canuck Pale Ale from Great Lakes Brewery on the mic, okay?
Nice and cold. The mountains are blue, Mike. I love it. Thank you, by the way. You're not having any?
Well, I was gonna have one later with Antonia Zerbisias. I always say that name wrong. Antonia Z, I should call her. I'm recording with her this afternoon. I didn't grab myself one, but you pop that on the mic.
There we go.
Okay, that is from Great Lakes Brewery. You are gonna have some to take home with you. Do you drink beer during the morning Zoom on Zoomer Radio?
I don't drink beer during the week. I really don't drink.
This is Friday, of course.
Well, yeah, but I don't drink that much beer at all. I drink in the summer if I'm, after a slow pitch game over at Centennial Park where I play. We'll have drinks after the game.
I played slow pitch for 15 years in Etobicoke.
Where? Over at
a lot of different diamonds. There were diamonds, Burnham Thorpe. And there's a couple of field gate area. And then we also played at, there's a Kennedy Road up north.
Oh, north of Etobicoke.
There's a complex with four diamonds there. But I played in a league for many years. Okay.
There's a field right down your street. It's 27th Street. Jeff O'Neill plays in the league. He plays the Tuesday night league, but there's a Thursday night league that I play
Dog
in.
himself.
Yeah.
He said no to his Toronto Mic'd invitation.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I could have reached
Although
out to him
Tucker
for
and
it.
Maura said no. I definitely wanted to have them on when they were coming on to CFNY.
Maybe I should have said no.
Well, you said no for 11 years. No, okay, so you're enjoying your Great Lakes beer.
Yeah.
Proud sponsors of the program. They're hosting us FOTMs, us Friends of Toronto Mike. All the listeners are going to collect on June 26th at Great Lakes Brewery on 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard in South Etobicoke from 6 to 9 p.m. Thursday, June 26, 2025. Palma Pasta is going to feed us that night. Palma Pasta sent over a lasagna for you, Andy Wilson.
I can't wait, by the way. This is
In the freezer.
This is a big box of lasagna. This Saturday night, here I come. Yeah. You don't get a body like this,
Does your
Mike.
wife know you're bringing home lasagna?
I bring home the lasagna every night.
That's bacon.
No, you don't get a body like this, Mike, by not having lasagna.
When I saw you in the car, and then I was coming to get you to help you get down here and not hit your head, I said you looked like George Michael because you had these shades on, these big shades, and you had like that 5 o'clock shadow thing that George kind of lived with. And I'm like, you looked like George Michael, which is the highest compliment I've ever given anybody.
You know what? Nobody's ever called me George Michael, so I will take that compliment. You could have called.
Well, I was really far away, and I wasn't wearing glasses.
Yeah, listen, you could have gone the route of Boy George, but I appreciate you going the George Michael route.
Do you really want to hurt me? Okay, this is awesome because I'm going to give you a measuring tape from Ridley Funeral Home.
Yeah, so this is in my family, Ridley Funeral Home is a competition
Do tell.
I've got not my whole family, but we've been in the funeral business for at least 25 years. My dad retired from the Ontario government when he was very, very young. He got a great package. He was 49 years old. He was too young to retire, but he got so he decided to work part-time for funeral homes, and he worked downtown Toronto at a funeral home called Bedford. And then they live up in Markham, and he's been working at a funeral home called Highland Funeral Home for about 25 years, as long as he worked for the Ontario government. It's just across from where Buttonville Airport used to be. So there, 404
where
and
Humble Howard
Rutherford.
once took me on a flight.
Yeah, exactly. His plane was at Buttonville. The funeral company is called Arbor Memorial, and my sister works at head office. My dad still works there. My cousin just retired from there.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay. Again, and now I remember introducing you to Brad Jones.
Yes.
At Kelsey's in December.
Yeah, we had a good talk. Because he was in the funeral business, and I've always had a fascination with the funeral business, and I've always respected the funeral business. I think they are salt of the earth people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Brad and I had a great chat.
Amazing. It's like a calling. Brad Jones, excellent at his job, owns and operates. He's the chief bottle washer. He's the funeral director. He's got a podcast called Life's Undertaking.
Yeah.
People should subscribe to. Speaking of podcasts, real quick here, I want to tell people, earlier this morning, I recorded an episode of Building Toronto Skyline with Nick Iones. Nick Iones is a proud sponsor of this program. And this episode was all about One Young. I took a note here. Here, I'm taking my notes here. And again, Nick has nothing to do with this development except that he's a fan of wood developments in general and condo developments and residential towers. And he's a big fan of skyscrapers because he wrote a book called Battle of the Skyscrapers. But at One Young Street, where the Toronto Star building was, in this complex here, it's going to be 345 meters. Okay, so if you get the penthouse, which I think goes for like $30 million, I think it's still available, Andy. If you're making that Zoomer cash, you might want to get in on that.
Yeah, I might have to ask for a raise or two.
It's at the height of the observation deck of the CN Tower.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That's
and it's 105 stories. So no building in Toronto. It's not quite finished yet. But they're now starting to sell different phases or whatever. But when this is done at One Young, it is going to be the tallest building in Canada. Residential tallest building, excluding obviously the CN Tower, which is not a residential skyscraper.
Would you want to have a penthouse that high? Like, I'd like to have a penthouse, but I don't know if I would
105th floor?
I don't know if I'd be able to enjoy it. You know what I mean?
The view would be amazing.
The view would be amazing, but as soon as I go out onto the patio or onto the balcony, I'd be freaking out. I don't know if I'd be able to enjoy it.
And I'd be worried, am I swaying with the wind? Like, I know they have architects and people are taking care of this, but I also not that I'm afraid of them, but I just don't like taking elevators. Like, I like to take stairs, and I can't imagine I'll be there in an hour. I got 105
spending your
flights.
whole day in the stairwell.
But if anything you've ever wanted to know about One Young, we talked to the people at Pinnacle International this morning on the latest episode of Building Toronto Skyline, and that all the questions you want to know have answered about One Young are answered by this gentleman from Pinnacle International.
That's very cool.
That happened today. And last but not least, Andy, because we're going to get you to Montreal and then we're going to talk Zoomer. You've been amazing, by the way. How is it going so far? You got a beer, you got lasagna, you feeling good?
I couldn't be happier.
Okay.
Tell you the truth. I don't know if I'll leave. I might just hang out in your basement the whole
I need
day.
a co-host. It's tough to do this. I think Humble and Fred, it must be nice to have somebody else. Like, because I've been a one-man operation here, but you're not alone in the booth. You've got Jane there with you. We'll get to that.
We'll get to it because it's not exactly true. I can actually relate a little bit to how you're feeling.
You're gonna say Stu's got it figured out because Stu Jeffries, he works alone. He used to work with Colleen Rushholm to bring it all full circle here, but he's been working alone a long time. Okay, so just to share that if you, Andy Wilson, have a drawer, a room, a closet full of old cables, old electronics, maybe old phones. I don't know what you've got piled up there. Don't throw that in the garbage. You go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, you put in your postal code, and then you'll find out where you can drop it all off to be properly recycled so those chemicals do not end up in our landfill. You got it, Andy Wilson?
I love that because everybody's got a drawer of just electronics that they want to throw out. They haven't seen.
And the cables, right? I've got cables I've been holding on to since the 90s.
Oh, mic cables, XLR cables,
coaxial cables. I don't even have anything in the house.
Quarter-inch this and it's ridiculous. And it serves no purpose other than taking up space.
And you're just, I'll hold on to this. Well, no.
Yeah, I might need this.
Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca. Okay. This is sad news for you, Andy Wilson, because Tucker in the Morning on 99.9 Virgin Radio comes to an end.
Yeah.
What happened?
This, I don't regret anything, but I don't really hold any ill will or anything like that for anything that's happened in my career. I feel like I've been lucky enough to be able to get over it. But it was still a change because I was let go. And as were a number of other people, it made absolutely no sense. And it still makes no sense to me. And they never do, but we had great ratings, like the best ratings that 99.9 had in probably damn near 8, 9, 10 years. We were killing it, but for whatever reason, they wanted to make some changes. I think there was some politics that were involved. I don't know.
You don't say, Mr.
Well,
Wilson.
there always is, but it felt like the politics were pretty obvious. But
the politics are dancing.
But they, you know what? It worked out. Again, I still... I'm over it, obviously, but I still don't like how it all ended. And I think Tucker and Maura would say the same thing. It didn't end in a positive way, as these things typically don't. But it worked out for me personally. I was able to rebound. I was very, very fortunate. I bounced back pretty quickly. And I was in Montreal about 2 months later.
So who became the morning show on 99.9?
Adam Wilde. It was Adam.
Oh, speaking of Marilyn Dennis.
Yeah.
What a small world we live in.
Speaking of politics.
What a small... Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay, Adam Wilde.
Yeah.
Son of Marilyn Dennis, if you don't know.
It was Adam Wilde. It was TJ, who was the afternoon guy at Virgin, and Jax from Kiss 92.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, she came over to Virgin.
So do you feel like possibly Marilyn, who's very powerful at Bell Media Radio because she's been anchoring that successful morning show for many, many decades, since the 80s there, do you think maybe the fact that her son wanted her son to have that gig cost you this job?
Well, I'm sure she wanted her son to have any gig, but
she must have some pull there.
Well, but her son also knew.
Trying to get you in trouble, Andy.
No, I know you are, but I'm not going to bite, Mike. But her son also knew, a lot of people in upper management, and they knew him. And they didn't make just a change on the morning show, right? They made sweeping changes. They got rid of two weekend announcers, a midday person. They got rid of a number of people. So it wasn't just if it was just the morning show, then it might be a little bit more suspect. But it was a big day when they got rid of, I think, 8 or 9 people that day. It was a lot. It was a big one.
And you got swept away in this wave.
Yeah.
There's no more Andy Wilson on 99.9.
And that was my, talking about Howard first time ever being fired. That was my first time.
Which is amazing that it's amazing to get that far, I suppose.
Yeah, I know, right? I was eventually, a law of diminishing returns, right? Eventually I'm going to get let go.
Although Fred Patterson started with whatever company was owning 102.1 at the time, but he started there, I think, in the late 70s. And he worked for the same place till he left Mojo for Mix 99.9. Like that's how long he went. And of course he left on his own to go to that story. You ever want to get Humble and Fred going, talk about that decision to leave Mojo for for Mix 99.9.
Yeah, they were so happy with that decision. Yeah, it was really
well, it was bigger money.
It was a great
without a
offer.
doubt, when you talk to them, they've been public about this because on this show particularly, without a doubt, Howard talked Fred into it. Like without a doubt, Fred was hesitant to leave the place he had been for a very long time.
Yeah.
And Howard said, we'd be foolish to leave this money on the table, and talked Fred into it.
Well, they were probably both right? Fred had a great thing at Chorus, probably better at Edge than they did at Mojo. I think they both probably, in retrospect, now knowing what they know now, I think they both regretted leaving Edge. But at the same time, again, it was a great contract from Mix. And I think that, being on a music station was probably better for them anyway. And this was a great offer. So, yeah, absolutely. Why not?
But it sounded, again, we're going backwards here, but then we're going to get back to Montreal here. But it sounds like standard purchased the Humble and Fred show and then tried to change the Humble
That's
and
it.
Fred show.
Yeah, they did.
Which is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, you know who they are, right? Like you don't sign, if you take it to a sports analogy, you don't sign a super offensive forward and then put him on the fourth line and expect him to score goals.
Right. Yeah,
right?
McDavid's a free agent. You don't give him the maximum contract to have him be like a checking forward.
Yeah. You got to know who you're dealing with. You got to know who you're signing, and you're signing these two, super funny, talented guys. Let them, and they're big personalities. Let them be big personalities.
I hated the music. I'm going on the public record. I hate it because I liked Humble and Fred, and I wanted to listen to them on Mix 99.9, but I couldn't listen to them because I hated the music. Well, it was so watered down, and I was more of an edge guy.
It was.
But I fucking hated the morning show on Edge. So I was like a man of out of country. I was like Stringer Bell, man of out of country, because I liked Humble and Fred, but I didn't like the music.
Yep.
I liked the Edge music, but I fucking hated the morning show.
Yeah.
Where do I go?
Yeah, exactly.
I have to start a podcast. Okay, so Montreal. So interesting. During this period, though, although there's a brief period of time when Maura and Tucker started a podcast. Do you know this?
Because I started it with them. We all started.
Where did that start? Was that at Humble and Fred's studio?
The very first one we did. It might have been at Humble and Fred's studio. It might have been in Tucker's basement. We definitely did do one podcast at Humble and Fred's studio at on the Queensway.
Yeah.
But we did a number of episodes at Tucker's house in the basement there.
And again, this has been scrubbed. I'm sure no one can find this anymore. And Tucker and Maura are happy on 102.1 now, and you're happy on Zoomer Radio. But Mark Weisblatt used to tip me off that you've got to hear this. This is the most like authentic radio ever. This podcast that existed for a minute
with Tucker and Maura.
Yeah,
it was authentic.
Like they were completely like real talking this industry and what happened to them at 99.9. It was really refreshing, and that's why it had to die.
Well, because it was so what had just happened was so new, and I think we were all still pretty pissed off about it, and so we took it out on the air. We were just really open with what happened, and we just
so email me a link to maybe the Google Drive where those files exist. Okay, I want to revisit.
I would love to. I think I might have them somewhere.
Okay, hook me up. That was the best ever. Montreal.
Yeah.
So you couldn't get a gig in Toronto, so you're like, we got to move?
It wasn't even that at all. I didn't have time to look. The program director in Montreal reached out to me 2-3 days later. I was still getting over what just happened, and he reached out to me, and we started chatting, and we started chatting. He reached out to me to be the producer of the morning show and the assistant program director, and through our chats, I sent him a demo that I had, and he got back to me, and he said, "How would you feel about being a morning show co-host?" And I had never been on air in a host capacity at all. I wasn't seeking out the job, but it was a major market in Toronto. It's a major morning show
in Canada.
Sorry,
you said in Toronto.
I've been up since 4:30. How could I say no? How could I say no? So, and we were in a place where my wife and I, we were able to take a chance like that. And we have so many great stories to tell. And that's the best part about that experience was, not the job and not this and the stories that we came back with is just,
it's exciting.
It's worth it.
I mean, I wouldn't know. I've only lived in one city, and I feel like, oh shit, it sounds exciting. Even my oldest daughter who's living in Montreal, I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat to be in a different place for a while.
I think the stats, like 70% of people don't move outside of their area code. Like they just stay in the same area code their whole life.
I'm another statistic, Andy.
And I had no problem being that guy either. I lived literally 3 streets down from you, Mike. I lived in Mimico. We loved Mimico. We still come back. But it was an opportunity that we wouldn't get. These opportunities don't come along, and we were in a place to try something new. And I think when you get that chance, you got to bite. You got to take it.
Without a doubt. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what is this show called? Is this
it was called
I'm going to try it.
The Beat It was the station was the Beat 92.5. Yeah, and I think it was the
Nikki, Sam, and Andy.
Yes, that was
Mornings with Nikki, Sam, and Andy.
Was that what? Okay, yeah.
Okay, I check in my notes here.
Yeah, Nikki. It was the 3 of us, and we had a traffic person and a news person as well. Her name was Kim.
Okay.
So
and you were there 18 months.
About that, yeah. COVID was really what
COVID killed that.
COVID sunk me.
So you came back to Toronto.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you get the gig at Zoomer Radio?
Again, I was super lucky. I got let go in Montreal, and that was like panic set in. Luckily, my wife was able to work and, all that sort of stuff, but panic set in. Like, we don't speak French. We have no connections in this province, and nobody's hiring. It's COVID. I got let go in July of 2020. COVID was raging. Nobody knew anything.
Oh yeah.
And so I decided time for a career change, and I started taking a real estate course for Ontario to get my license to sell real estate in Ontario. And nobody really knows about this. Only a few people I've talked to about this.
Breaking news.
Yeah, nobody. Well,
TJ Connors did this. He had a big show in Winnipeg.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, Scruff Connors kid.
Yeah, I knew Scruff.
He went and got his
Scruff.
real estate, and that's what he does.
Well, what's the old Family Guy joke? Real estate is the backup plan for a failed career or something like that.
Well, listen, a lot of people who couldn't make a living in radio ended up making a living selling homes.
Well, you know what the thing is, Mike? A lot of thing with real estate is you sell yourself, right? You're selling your home, but you're selling yourself to get the client. And I thought, I'm pretty good at selling myself, and I like working with people, so let's try this. And I started the course. Something happened with our family. My wife's father got a little bit sick. We had to come back to Ontario, and as I was taking you have to take 5 exams in the real estate course. Okay. I did the first exam, and that evening, the program director at Zoomer Radio messaged me just over Facebook Messenger and said, "Hey, how's it going? You got a sec?" And I knew right then, I've got an opportunity here. We might be able to get back to Ontario. We can do this.
So you're producing over there for a while before you're co-hosting the Zoomer.
I was producer. I was producer of the show from March of 2021 till September of 2024.
What happened in September 2024 where the Andy Wilson experience is elevated to Zoomer Radio Morning Zoom host?
Again, it's just, they make a change. Radio is the most fluid industry ever. Changes happen, whether it be the industry is struggling or not struggling. Changes are constant, right? So there was a change, and it came from... I was never going for the job. It's funny. A lot of the jobs that I've gotten, I've never actually gone for.
So you weren't lobbying, let's get rid of this person. I could do this with Jane.
No, absolutely not. And I think I think that's known. But no, I wasn't lobbying for anything. But I had been filling in for her when she had been away on vacation or sick or anything like that. I had been filling in for about a year and a half.
Sorry, who? Because this was lauded. That's the word I'm looking for.
Sure.
Lauded. That's a $5 word.
Depends on where you're going with it.
$5 shake. This show was lauded as the only morning show that was all women.
Yes, yeah. It was the Morning Zoom with Sam and Jane. Sam Houston was...
Sam Houston,
yeah.
There you go. So
yeah.
Sam Houston, Jane Brown.
Yeah.
And it was lauded as the only morning show in Canada that was hosted by 2 women.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but I think it was. It certainly was in Toronto, which is, biggest market in Canada. So let's go with it. Yeah. And it was great. And that's what, I think that was certainly an attractive piece to the morning show. And, Moses did a great job of championing both of them. And then, about a year later, the classical 96.3 morning show, also a Zoomer Media property, was also all women, which was really, really cool.
Very cool, but you're not a woman, right?
No, I'm not. Last time I checked, last time I looked down there.
You do not identify as a woman. Okay.
No.
So Andy, you obviously, Sam Houston left the morning show. You took over as co-host with Jane Brown. What's it like working with Jane?
Again, I know I sound like a broken record. I'm just so lucky to work with so many talented people. And Jane has been in Toronto radio. She's, she hears this, she's going to correct me for sure.
She's going to be on Toronto Mike soon.
At least since the 80s. She was downtown Jane Brown on Q107. She worked a little bit with John Derringer. She's worked with Ted Wallishin. I don't know if she worked with John Moore, but she worked at 1010 for many, many years. She's been at Zoomer Radio and working with Libby Znaimer and Moses for many, many years. So again, a super talented person in the industry, in the biggest market in the country. And I'm fortunate enough to work with them. And her and I had crossed paths a little bit at 1010, so we kind of knew each other. But
But you had good chemistry.
I think we have very good chemistry.
rapport.
We have a lot of fun working together. We do enjoy each other's companies. She's a little bit older than me, but we get along great. I love her husband. She loves my wife, Kelly. So it sounds so...
You're a happy man.
I'm very happy and I'm very fortunate. And I know it sounds, again, like a broken record, but I'm very, very lucky.
You and Bob Willett are the two happiest people in radio.
I think gratitude helps. Because radio can suck the life right out of you. Radio is really, really difficult. But if you're lucky and you know it, it really, really helps. And yeah, I'm very, very grateful for the opportunities that I've had because I totally understand that they don't come along for everybody.
And again, we mentioned this off the top, but you're also the program director over there.
Yeah.
So what does that entail? Like, because do you have time to be the program director?
No, I don't. It's a busy job.
Do these programs direct themselves? Is this like I'm just trying to understand. So I've been to the Zoomerplex. Yep. I have friends who work in the Zoomer world. I want to shout out FOTM Joel Goldberg.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever crossed paths.
I know the name.
You know the name. Okay. So, and I feel like Ed Conroy from Retro Ontario does a lot of stuff with Moses and the Zoomerplex there and all these good people there. So you, Andy Wilson, you get to be co-host here on Zoomer Radio. You get to be the program director over there. What's your relationship like with Moses? Like, does he know you exist?
He does. And I've had a very, I don't know, maybe he would say totally different, but I think I've had
He'd say Andy who?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think I've had a very good relationship with Moses because a lot of people, as they should, they see Moses as this, this big giant titan of the industry. And he started.
He's a visionary,
Yeah, he started Much Music and Speaker's Corner and all these properties. And I just treat him as just a regular guy. Right, like I shoot the shit with him, and certainly I have all the time in the world for Moses, and when he talks, I certainly listen. But at the same time, I like shooting the shit and giving him a hard time here and there. And I think I've got a pretty good relationship with Moses. I think it's a pretty open relationship with Moses. The thing with him is, most of the time, if you don't hear from Moses, that's a good thing. He's not one to say that was awesome, I loved that break or anything like that. He's got too much going on. He doesn't have time for that. So
he's got an empire to run.
Yeah.
And how hands-on is he nowadays? Because this privatization move, and some people speculated maybe he was going to be less engaged, but from people I talked to, he's as engaged as ever.
He's no more or no less engaged than he was before. Moses comes in a little bit later on in the day, so I don't see him as often as people that might be working in the afternoon. I don't see him, I try to get, FaceTime with him, once a month or something like that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And half the time it's just crossing paths in the hall and we might, shoot the shit for 5 minutes. But Moses is as hands-on as you want a boss to be. And by that, I mean, he's not super hands-on. The worst is when you've got a boss of any sort that's just hovering over you like an eagle. That's not Moses at all. He is very, we did an election special for the Ontario election a few weeks back, and his stake was, I will leave the breaks and the timing and the personalities of who is doing the breaks up to you. I'm just wondering if we can do just this one thing, and we did that one thing. And that's, he didn't care about anything else. He kind of lets talent do their thing. He puts a lot of faith in the talent. He knows who he's hiring. He's hiring people that know what they're doing, so let them do what they do.
Moses is in the same exclusive club as Jeff O'Neill, the O-Dog, in that he has politely declined his Toronto Mic'd invitation.
I'm not... Listen, depending on how this podcast goes, maybe he comes on, but I know that you've reached out to him. I have not, He knows that I'm doing the podcast, and that's it.
I think he heard too many episodes of Gallagher and Gross Save the World, for which I was the producer for, but I would just like to remind Moses, if he's listening at home, I was not the host of that show, merely a producer, capturing the greatness of once Zoomer Radio morning show host John Gallagher and Peter Gross, who worked for Moses many a time. Man, go listen to those Gallagher and Gross Save the World while you can. Those were amazing.
Gallagher was a little bit before my time, but his picture is still up here and there on different things.
John Gallagher.
John Gallagher.
Wow. Okay, I heard his voice during a Super Bowl commercial.
Big fan of Trish Stratus.
He's. You know what? If somebody dies, heaven forbid, people do die, but it'd be a David Bowie or you name it, maybe George Michael. There's a selfie of John Gallagher with that celebrity well before we had smartphones in our pocket with a camera. Like he had disposable cameras at the ready.
And he'll be the first to tell you too.
Oh, I have his book, Big League Babylon, man. Holy smokes. And I want the version before the lawyers got to it. Holy smokes. Okay, Andy, I feel like you've kicked ass. You took names. People can hear you Monday through Friday on Zoomer Radio, and that's 7:40 a.m. But is there also an FM presence for Zoomer Radio?
Yeah, if you're in the downtown core, it's 96.7. And then obviously, it's 2025, so you can listen to us online through your smart speaker. We
can do that now. Zoomer Radio.
Just so you know.
You can ask Google to play it now.
Yeah, it's we got the Zoomer Radio app, so you can listen to us anywhere, literally, as with any radio station in 2025.
And you mentioned you're getting up at like 4:30.
Yeah, well, 4 o'clock. I gave myself a little credit there. 4 o'clock. 4:10 if you want to be exact.
What time are you on the air?
6. Well, we have a newscast at 6, but I first speak at 6:10. So our first
6:10.
Yeah.
And what time do you get out of there?
10 o'clock. So it's a 4-hour show. So I think a lot more shows are going 4 hours. They're kind of cutting out the 9 o'clock because, you can save a few
less
bucks
bodies to hire.
Exactly.
I'm surprised you haven't been replaced on The Simpsons when they had that with DJ 3000 or whatever the heck it was. Do you remember this automated DJ? Is that the next Zoomer Radio host?
Vaguely. It's called
Right.
AI.
Oh, those clowns. Yeah. So watch your back, Andy.
Yeah, I have been. For 25 years or so, I've been trying to watch.
You're kind of young. You can't. You have going back to real estate. Like radio is going to die before you do.
I started when I was 19 years old. I was 19.
Oh, that was just this recording of Toronto Mike. You started when you were 19 years old. Okay. But I just realized you have gifts for me, man. This is the time right now. Do you have gifts for me, or am I being presumptuous?
What do you mean this is a time right now? Is this part of the podcast?
Yeah,
like
because
every
I want to receive the gift before I play us off.
Yeah, you receive
to
time.
capture the excitement.
You kind of block off time to receive gifts.
You don't do that when you have guests on Zoomer?
Yeah, that's what
this is the give Andy Wilson and Jane Brown a gift.
So I brought you a Zoomer Radio mug.
Okay,
It's a bright yellow mug too.
Oh,
which I love.
And the same color as The Simpsons.
Yes,
okay,
there you go.
Zoomer Radio.
Yep.
Love it. Okay, I'm going to hold it up for the camera.
I've got you a sweatshirt, the same sweatshirt that I'm wearing, which is, I love this sweater. It's super comfortable. I wear my Zoomer Radio sweatshirt on Fridays. It's more of a chill look. I've got more of a professional look Monday to Thursdays. But yeah,
What do you wear, a suit and tie over there?
No, but a nicer sweater and nicer pants. I've got like these cargo pants on right now.
So the play-by-play here is I'm putting on my sweater.
Yeah, you're covering over your Great Lakes shirt.
Yeah, wow. Shout out to Great Lakes. Okay. So I'm going to wear this for the photo we take after this.
Yeah, buddy.
Okay.
And
oh my God, there's more.
Oh, well, this is the pièce de résistance.
Shout out
my
to
French
Mimico.
is not great. Pièce de la résistance.
All those years in Montreal.
Yeah, didn't do anything for me.
So San Remo Bakery.
Go
ahead.
I mentioned to you that I lived in Mimico. I lived at Lakeshore and Royal York for about 8.5 years. And Royal York Road, San Remo Bakery, it was literally a 10-minute walk. And again, you don't get a body like this by not having San Remo Bakery. So it's Zeppeli season. So I've got you 2 different kind of Zeppelis, and their number 1 selling donut is the apple fritter. You live in Mimico. Obviously, you go to San Remo.
No, I don't live in
Mimico.
Mimico. I'm pissed at you right now to even suggest this is not Mimico.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Oh, is it New Toronto? Is that where you're going to go with?
It's not Mimico. It's New Toronto. There's literally a border. You are now in New Toronto, not Mimico.
You're like one of those people in the beach that, you get upset when people call it the beaches.
Different. It's different. It's like telling me, like if you live by, I don't know, you live in Port Credit and you say, I live in Toronto. You don't. You live in Mississauga. I don't live in Mimico. I live in New Toronto.
I grew up in Markham, but whenever we go anywhere, I always say, where'd you grow up? Well, we grew up in Toronto. Nobody knows where Markham is. I live in Toronto.
See, I would be a proud Markham guy, and I don't care if you know where Markham is. I know where Markham is. I'd be proudly from Markham. I currently live in New Toronto, and when people call it Mimico, I could just let it go, close enough. But I don't let it go, Andy.
Okay, I'm going to take those donuts back now.
You can't, you know why? So it's Friday, so Monica's working from home, 2 floors up, my wife, and when she finds out that I went all the way to San Remo to buy her these donuts, she's going to be so happy.
Happy to help out, Mike.
Andy, thanks so much. Your last question before I play out. You've been amazing, and of course, if you have anything else you want to add, you can do so. But my last question is, I remember you being a massive Kid Rock fan.
Yep.
And I will say, I also was a Kid Rock fan myself and went and saw Kid Rock live at the Molson Amphitheater, as it was called at the time. Kid Rock, I'm curious in 2025, how do you feel about Kid Rock?
2 things can be true. I can not agree with his politics, and I can still love his music. And, I'm not going to be picking and choosing whose music I like or whose movies I like.
You're not canceling Kid Rock because he's probably anti-trans.
I'm not canceling anybody. I'm not donating to the Kid Rock Foundation or anything like that. But I don't know. I'm not.
You're conflicted.
I'm not conflicted. I still like his music, and if I hear it, I'm like, yeah, it was a great song, and then I'm gonna move on, and I'm not gonna fuss and muss about his politics and whether I agree with this or disagree with that. Some of Kid Rock's music got me through various difficult times in my life, as anybody's music does. So, and I still love some of those tunes, and I appreciate what they did for me at the time. So, no, I haven't bought a Kid Rock album in a long time, and I haven't gone to a concert of his in a long time or anything like that. I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan.
Let me rephrase this then. Are you I'm not saying you should stop listening to Kid Rock. I throw on fucking Ignition remix from R. Kelly. Okay,
the remix to Ignition.
I can separate the artist from the art.
Hot and fresh out the kitchen.
Right. Like, how do I resist, right? And I will say this on the record, recording still before we wind down, that I think Ba Witta Ba is a fucking, that's a jam right there.
It's a banger.
And
only
when I hear
God
it,
knows.
My name is Kid.
Yeah, only God knows why. Cowboy. They were great tunes.
I even like American Badass and some of those.
That was a great
cover
of a Metallica song. Great cover.
Okay, and even when he merged the Leonard Skinner with
Warren Zevon, all summer long.
Yeah. So are you, as program director, adding Ba Witta Ba to the Zoomer radio playlist?
Currently, we have no Kid Rock in our library.
Not even All Summer Long or something, whatever that song is called. What about Picture with Sheryl Crow?
No, we don't have it. We might. I think we actually have All Summer Long. I should correct myself. We do have All Summer Long, but that's the only Kid Rock song we have.
Zoomer Radio could totally get away with playing the Picture duet with Sheryl Crow.
Why are you not? Why we should be playing out like with Ba Witta Ba?
You know what? I'm so because I recorded this video and I'm gonna throw it on YouTube, and I'll get the fucking takedown notice from YouTube and Spotify because I play Kid Rock. I used to play lots of music. I still do it, but I do it sometimes. I leave an episode clean, so at least I know this one will stay online. That's why Rob Pruce recorded this cover of Rosie and Gray from Shakespeare My Butt by Lowest of the Low to try to evade these algorithms and bots.
Lowest of the Low.
Me too, buddy. Me too. Does Zoomer play Lowest of the Low?
No, we don't. Not yet.
But Zoomers, we talked off the top. Gen X is now Zoomer. Gen X Toronto people love Shakespeare My Butt.
Zoomer does play a lot more 90s stuff, by the way. We were playing a lot more 90s, which I love because that's my style of music. So, yeah.
Do you play Pearl Jam's Black?
No, we don't play any Pearl Jam. Maybe a little Yellow Ledbetter would work for Zoomer.
100%. Yeah. Or Last Kiss.
Oh, yeah. For sure, Last Kiss.
Andy, I love this, man.
This is a lot of fun. I would love to do this again. Bring Jane Brown in with me.
Sold.
Yeah.
I recorded that. That's binding. Lorne Honickman says that's a binding contract.
I'm not bringing you any more San Remo, though.
You know what? I demand the San Remo if you're going to be back here. Look, thank you for the San Remo. I'm wearing the sweatshirt. It'll be in the photo we're going to take. I have the lasagna. Make sure you get it before we take the photo. And thanks for this. You'll be back. And I definitely want Jane Brown on the program. Maybe Jane Brown can bring Moses with her.
You're desperate. You're desperate, my friend.
I want to talk to Moses. I've been honest.
As you should. He's got a lot more stories than I do.
Do you know how many City TV episodes of Toronto Mike there are?
I had a meeting with Moses the other week, and outside
down the music.
in his office, right, is a bunch of posters of things that he's worked on over the years, and he's got a picture of. Do you remember the late at night on City TV, like after midnight, he would have his Baby Blue 2 or his Baby Blue movies, and they were basically like softcore porn. A meeting with him recently, I saw that picture, and as I was walking out the door, I pointed at the picture and I said, I've spent many a Friday and Saturday night watching those movies. Just
I thought he had a giant poster of Peter Gross.
He might.
The following program contains adult themes, nudity, and coarse language. Viewer and parental discretion is advised.
Yes.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,645th show. Go to torontomike.com for your many Toronto Mike needs. Can't imagine what they are, but that's where you go, torontomike.com. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, Building Toronto Skyline, and Ridley Funeral Home. The next episode features Antonia Zerbisias She was a longtime Toronto Star journalist. We're going to have a great chat, what's going on in this chaotic world of ours, and I'll find out what she thinks of Kid Rock. Join me then.